Salutations everybody, it is Matty here today, sitting down to talk about that grim Xbox news. I appreciate everyone's patience. I know I'm outside that 24-hour news window, but with the Jedi Survivor review dropping, I spent so much time on it, not only playing it, but producing the review. I was up till about like 3 a.m. the night before it dropped, just working on it, tinkering with it, making sure it was just right. So yeah, when the news broke about Xbox and the CMA, I went, well, there's another video, but I didn't really want to saturate the sub box too hard and ruin all that hard work I put into my Survivor review. So thank you for your patience. I appreciate it. Today, we are talking about the CMA moving to block the acquisition of Activision Blizzard by Xbox. And a lot of folks are saying, throw up the X. It's done. It's over. And it's looking grim. No doubt about it. It's not fully over yet, but there is the chance that this actually does fall through now. There have been times before where myself, other creators, and pundits around the industry have overreacted, but this time around it is truly legitimately looking like the deal could be off. Now, Xbox is still going to go through with it, but there's one last roadblock that's really going to make or break this deal. We're going to dive into the ins and outs of the CMA blocking this deal, why they decided to do so, what this means for Xbox moving forward, and obviously talk about the hypothetical, okay, the deal does get canceled. What now? What do they do now? We're going to go through all of that in today's video, so if you're new here and you're into Xbox news and information, you're in the right place. Consider subscribing. Hopefully come around the summer showcase, things will get a little bit more positive on the Xbox front, but right now, it's not looking that good, so let's get into it. The reason behind the blocking of this deal has to do with the cloud. The CMA writes, the cloud allows UK gamers to avoid buying expensive gaming consoles and PCs and gives them much more flexibility and choice as to how they play. Allowing Microsoft to take such a strong position in the cloud gaming market, just as it begins to grow rapidly, would risk undermining the innovation that is crucial to the development of these opportunities. Given the remedy applies only to a defined set of Activision games, which can be streamed only in a defined set of cloud gaming services, provided they are purchased in a defined set of online stores, there are significant risks of disagreement and conflict between Microsoft and cloud gaming service providers, particularly over a 10-year period in a rapidly changing market. Accepting Microsoft's remedy would inevitably require some degree of regulatory oversight by the CMA. By contrast, preventing the merger would effectively allow market forces to continue to operate and shape the development of cloud gaming without this regulatory intervention. All right, so that's their reasoning, and at face value, I kind of get it. I look at it, and this is something I've said before, that if there was anything that was going to get in the way of Xbox getting Activision, while I've had my takes before, some right, some wrong, one thing I've always been consistent with is the cloud was the dangerous part. Microsoft is way ahead of the competition already on that stuff. We have so many partnerships with Azure being made to the point where I always go back to Sony made a deal with Microsoft, pretty much their direct opponent, to use their Azure cloud servers. In the gaming sphere, we saw Sega make a deal with Microsoft to use their Azure servers for their super game, and so on. Microsoft is really ahead in cloud tech, and we can see that when we play their games via the cloud. In fact, my fiance just played and beat Contrast all through the cloud. I mean, what's happening with Xbox and where they're heading is super impressive, and I think to some extent, whether the OG in me likes it or not, is the future. So I understand at face value where the CMA is coming from. Microsoft's already ahead. It's a rapidly changing market. We don't know how it's going to evolve, and now they're putting in 10-year deals and saying, yeah, this should do it because the market will solidify by then. We'll know what cloud gaming is. But the CMA is arguing, well, no, not really, actually. This is going to be something that's going to change a lot. We don't know what's going to change into. And if we hand Microsoft the keys to this castle with all the stuff they're going to get from Activision, they will have a absolute stranglehold on that market. So again, at face value, I actually kind of get it. Now, where they lose me is normally when this stuff happens, as we've seen before, is you call for some type of remedy. Okay, the 10-year deal didn't work. 20-year deal? 15-year deal? 25-year deal? What's it going to take? What's it going to take for us to not have regulatory oversight where you're going to feel comfortable with this deal going through? That's where it starts to feel a bit like political posturing, because it did just look like, okay, we're going to shut this down because we should. It's also interesting because the scuttlebutt before this actual decision came to pass was that the CMA was likely going to approve it, as it seemed like they were changing course on Call of Duty, which was one of PlayStation's predominant arguments when they were heading into this investigation of the deal. But then the outcome has to do with exactly what many of us are expecting, which was the cloud. So that's how the CMA came to their decision. Again, I'm one of those people who's like, I kind of get where they're coming from here, but I do think Microsoft should have been given the opportunity to make potential changes. And that's why their next step is to go ahead and appeal the decision. Brad Smith, vice chair and president, writes on his Twitter account in an official post, "We remain fully committed to this acquisition and will appeal. The CMA's decision rejects a pragmatic path to address competition concerns and discourages technology, innovation, and investment in the United Kingdom. We have already signed contracts to make Activision Blizzard's popular games available on 150 million more devices, and we remain committed to reinforcing these agreements through regulatory remedies. We're especially disappointed that after lengthy deliberations, this decision appears to reflect a flawed understanding of this market and the way the relevant cloud technology actually works." End quote. So Microsoft is still going to go ahead and try to appeal, fight this in court. And what that means is their original July 18th deadline where they wanted this deal to go through will not happen. And what that means for you, those of you who are very tired of this news, and I'm right there with you, yeah, we're going to be hearing about this for a lot longer. But I think there is a asterisk next to that because I think there is a deadline here that's going to really make or break this. Right now, we're in the dark, right? This is not looking good, but it's not officially over. I think it's officially over or officially on, depending on where the EU goes with this. The EU had extended their deadline for a decision from April 25th originally, so we would be getting this news right away, to now May 22nd after Microsoft submitted remedies in a bid to gain its approval. The reason this is all important is because if the EU gives it the thumbs up, then Microsoft can steamroll, really focus on the battle in court against the FTC, try to win them over, and alienate, I'm sorry, my UK gamers, alienate the UK, where eventually they're kind of stand there like, everybody's going to get it except you. And then it's going to lead to pressure on the CMA. And in an ideal world, they loosen up and allow it to go through because everyone else around them has. But point being is, this is, I think, where Microsoft can hang their hat and say, all right, if we don't have to battle in court on three fronts, the USA, the UK, and the EU, then we can maybe see this through. But I already think we're talking 2024 when we're appealing in court with all these different regulatory bodies. It's going to be a battle. And I think if you got to fight that war on three fronts, you may as well walk, because at that point, your plans have been set back dramatically. And in fact, you may have an easier time taking that money where the goal here is to feed Game Pass, finding a new target that's going to be less of a pain to purchase, while it'll still be long-term, less of a pain to purchase, and putting that money into, I don't know, third-party deals, putting it into more day one Game Pass deals. That's where they can go with this. But we'll talk about that in just a moment. But that is, I think, the way that if you're looking for an optimistic point of view that you're going to get it, is the EU. So count down the days till May 22nd and see what the EU says. To me, if it's blocked, maybe Microsoft still fights it, but then we're going to be hearing about this thing for years, plural. And people are already tired of it. I know Microsoft doesn't care because it's paramount to their business model, but almost not so much. You got to take a look at the financials that have come out, because the way this news story synchronized with the quarterly earnings report, you were able to learn in tandem just how Microsoft operates, as we learned that this was the second best non-holiday quarter for Xbox as a brand. So Xbox is doing well, but interestingly in those stats is the hardware sales are down 30%. However, content and services are up. Also interesting is Microsoft stocks are up despite what is seemingly earth-shattering news for the brand. It shows just how little Xbox does factor into the overall success of Microsoft as a whole. They're a very small piece of the puzzle, hoping to grow more and more. Don't get me wrong, $3.59 billion in a quarter is nothing to turn your nose up at, but the reality is there are different components of Microsoft making way more money. So I do think there is that also business reality of turning away from the deal, because Xbox currently isn't the moneymaker, but this deal is designed to pump Game Pass full of consistent day one games of a higher quality to push up that content and services, because Xbox is slowly turning into that company that, yes, they want to sell a box to you, but they just want to really sell Game Pass, because Game Pass isn't defined by a box anymore. We're seeing them with Asus ROG Ally, for example, 3 months of Game Pass bundled in. We're seeing them on the Logitech G Cloud gaming handheld. No doubt they're trying to work something out with Nintendo, and I think one day they're going to try to figure out something with PlayStation. That is the future for Xbox, and I know a lot of people are going to be disappointed with that, but that is where they are heading. So that is why Satya Nadella's out there championing Xbox, because the content and services, which is Microsoft's bread and butter, is doing really well. And Xbox as a brand is on the up, just they're in second place compared to the rest of the industry. But make no mistake that when you look at all of this news together, it paints a picture of how little the Activision bid really matters to investors who are interested in Microsoft stock and continue to invest in them because they're making tons of advances elsewhere. It's kind of an eye-opener, I think, for a lot of gamers out there when we get into our own bubbles. Now, let's talk a bit about what this means for the future. Let's talk the hypothetical. All right, the deal is off. Matty, what happens now? I personally think this is where you see scorched earth Microsoft. This is something I've been saying for a while, and I think that is what's going to happen. When you have to pay the $3 billion cancellation fee for Activision Blizzard, you're still left with a lot of money you were prepared to invest into one place that can now, even half of that, go elsewhere. You could reinvest in your own studios, which I think is a really good idea, to reinvest in first party, as we're learning more and more with tons of LinkedIn postings that just seem to continuously leak that Microsoft has their first party studios working on multiple games at once. And as someone who was really surprised by something like Hi-Fi Rush, which just comes a year after Ghostwire Tokyo, that type of stuff is welcome in the ecosystem. And I think just investing money into those who you've already purchased is a great idea, right? You know, make the foundation nice and sturdy before you build a house on top of it, pretty much. Now, on top of that, I also do think if you get a lot of money, that it's going to go exactly how we expect. Microsoft is going to have millions of dollars, billions of dollars, that they're going to be prepared to sling into Game Pass deal after Game Pass deal after Game Pass deal. And I do think we're going to see them play PlayStation's game, because this goes back to what I said at Square One. When the deal was moved to be blocked by the FTC, when it started to become a struggle, the message would be sent to Microsoft that the way to fairly operate in this industry is to not buy these studios, but to play PlayStation's game, which is buying out exclusivity terms of all these various games coming out. And when you have a service to feed, even doubly so, I think Microsoft's more motivated than PlayStation to pay hand over fist to get big quality games in their service. That is my personal expectation, unfortunately beyond the reinvestment in their own teams. That's something I like that PlayStation did a couple of years ago. They got a couple $100 million and they just poured it right into their own first party studios. Not that Xbox isn't doing that, because Sony did make it an announcement sort of, but I do think this is really where Xbox is going to go, because their first party studios, we've seen, they bought them in 2018, and many of those teams we still haven't heard from in the terms of what they're working on. Think of someone like Compulsion Games. Still have no idea. We have leaks, but in an official sense, we have no clue whatsoever what it actually is. So we know it takes a while to steer the ship, to build these games from the ground up, and it's only going to start to take longer. So it's understandable why Xbox is going to go beyond its borders. But even now with a block deal, I don't think the next day you're going to see them coming in and say, all right, so we're getting Sega now instead. You going to block that too? What about that now? I just think there's going to be a window where Xbox has to recoup before they go for it once more. And yeah, I definitely think you're going to see a lot of Game Pass deals, a lot of exclusivity deals done beforehand. I also think, given that this deadline of May 22nd is happening right ahead of that Xbox showcase, there is the potential for that repeat of what happened last year, that pin in the balloon. Remember, we were heading into the 2022 showcase for Xbox, and there was a lot of excitement. Oh my God, here we go, Starfield, Redfall. Let's see what Bethesda's got. Let's see what Xbox has got. Finally, they're going to deliver. This is the holiday period. This is what we've been waiting for. And guess what happened, ladies and gentlemen? We get that post from Bethesda. There it is, delayed until 2023. No real information. And there was that feeling collectively in the community, and I am speaking anecdotally, where you go into the showcase, you see Starfield, there is that excitement, but it's not the insane level of hype going, oh, it's soon. it's like, man, this would be great if it were soon. Same thing with Redfall, for me to a lesser extent, but I know for many other people, they at least were excited. The temperature on that game is just all over the place. But point being, when you block the deal potentially, just leading into that showcase, again, it sets up this really uncomfortable scenario for Xbox that I honestly can't blame them for this time. It's one thing when you mismanage your first party. It's another thing when the deadline got delayed to just a couple of weeks south of your showcase, and if the deal gets blocked, yeah, the morale is going to be low again for this fan base, and what that means is the pressure is now high for this showcase to show out, to really demonstrate why you need to be here, because for a lot of people, this deal was it. Now, I would say, and this will sound fanboyish, but look, I like all consoles. I think my respective content output shows that. But I would say you're kind of missing the point and not paying attention to everything else that Xbox is doing if it was the make or break moment for the Activision deal. Don't get me wrong. It was going to pump the ecosystem full of value, and it is super important, and I'm pro on that deal. Don't get me wrong. But I think when you have that situation go away and you ignore things like Starfield, we are starting to miss the point a smidge. But I think the frustration is fair because it's all built on the back of consistent under-delivery. And so what Xbox needs to do with this showcase, they already needed to do this, but if the deal gets blocked, I imagine the showcase will be packed in by that point. There's no real changing it, but they're going to need to really, really make sure that this is the showcase of dreams. And by that, I mean, it's time to tell your fans what a lot of your first-party studios are up to. It's 2023. You bought a lot of them in 2018, some in 2019. It's time to let us see Avowed. It's time for us to see in full with a release date, Hellblade 2. Of course, we're going to get that release date for Forza Motorsport. It's time for the first party to show out. On top of the developer direct for Starfield, on top of Contraband, a game that just showed up and faded away, and have at least one substantial future-based announcement that makes people go, oh my god, they're doing it. Whether it be a tie-in type of game, you know, a Star Wars, a Marvel, a DC exclusive style game, whether it be that or Fallout New Vegas 2. Yes, I'm speaking a little biased on that, but a oh my god level announcement. There has to be a little bit of that now, then, and in the future type of showcase, where what PlayStation did during their showcase was sort of a now, then, and into the future, where we got some games soon, and then obviously we had games to look forward to, like Spider-Man 2, like Wolverine, like KOTOR Remake. Rest in peace, KOTOR Remake. It was a really, really exciting time. And Xbox, the pressure is on to deliver. I would be scared if I were them, if I'm looking at the showcase and having any hint of, I don't know if this is really good. It's not looking too hot, y'all. I would be mortified if I were them, because if they come out after the deal potentially gets blocked, morale's already low, and then they stumble out with a trash showcase, it's not going to be pretty. It's not. And I don't think that's an overreaction in the slightest to say fans will revolt and probably leave the system in spades because they need to show out. And I think they know that. Sometimes Xbox has the difficulty of reading the room. Other times they're pretty good at it because they're very communicative. But this showcase, I mean, the pressure is on. And the reality is now, Starfield can't just save y'all. It was at a certain point when you saw like the Redfall 30 FPS news, you go, okay, let's be real. It's not like the end of the world compared to Starfield being a terrible game. There was a lot of eggs in the Starfield basket by both fans and clearly Xbox alike. But now we're getting to that point where you're losing all of your aces up your sleeve, and Starfield standing alone, it's not fair to the game to shoulder that burden. And you got to produce things alongside it so it's not just that one game in the center of all this mess that says, well, at least I got that. There's got to be supporting pieces and things that get people to believe. So we'll see how Xbox handles all of this. It certainly feels like things are coming to a climax in this arc here. And I really do believe May 22nd is going to be the date we learn a lot about Xbox's plans for the future and really determine the morale heading into that showcase. Because of course the possibility is that Xbox gets the approval from the EU and then they can go and challenge the FTC and isolate the UK and it can work out for them. we'll see how it all goes. But nonetheless, a really fascinating development here. Things are looking grim for Xbox. How it'll turn out, I think, depends on the EU and a lot of other things, like Xbox wanting to go to war in court with 3 different places. I mean, we'll see. Maybe they're crazy enough to do that too. Time will tell on how much they really want Activision Blizzard. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you so much for tuning in to this very meaty discussion video. I'm looking forward to seeing your thoughts on the CMA blocking the Xbox acquisition of Activision Blizzard King. With that, take great care of yourselves, and I will see you in the next video. Be sure to follow me on Twitter, follow me on Instagram. Those links are in the description down below. And a big thank you to all the patrons, all the members who continue to support the hell out of the content here. Stay sexy, stay active. I love you all. Peace.